This is Andrew Gosden, a 14-year-old boy from Doncaster, England. A kind, well-mannered young man with incredible academic promise. Everything about Andrew and his family appeared completely normal, until one day on the 14th of September 2007, he stepped off of a train to London and stepped out of existence. Today, we're going to be looking into the story of one of England's most unexplainable missing children, and how the police drove his father to the brink of insanity. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is William and welcome to the Baker Street Bureau, the place where we dive into the strange, dark and mysterious goings-on across Great Britain. If that's something you're interested in, consider clicking the subscribe button, ringing that little notification bell. Set myself a goal of 100 subscribers by the end of the year, and it'd be awesome if we can achieve that together. Now, the aspiring YouTuber waffle out of the way, this is the story of Andrew Gosden, the boy genius who vanished without a trace. Before we start digging into the timeline, police investigation, failings and theories, it's really important to try and understand who this young man is. Andrew Gosden was born on the 10th of July 1993. He grew up in the town of Bolby in Doncaster. He was described by his friends, family and school teachers as a wonderful child. At school, he had a perfect attendance record and was part of the gifted and talented program, showing that he was an exceptional student. He was expected to achieve great things academically and had won prizes in mathematics competitions, which had made him a shoo-in for a place at Cambridge University. Despite his prowess in the classroom, Andrew was described to have had a neutral attitude about school, saying that he'd hoped the upcoming school term would prove more of a challenge to him, after he'd cruised through school so far. It's not uncommon for intelligent children to feel unchallenged at school. When the national curriculum is tailored for somewhere around the average performing child, having a more advanced ability set can often leave you feeling untested and generally bored. In 2006, Andrew had attended a 2-week summer school at Lancaster University as part of the Gifted and Talented program. His parents recalled that when he returned, he felt enthusiastic and invigorated from his time there. Home life for the Gosdens was very normal. His parents, Kevin and Glenys Gosden, were both committed Anglican Christians but hadn't baptized their children. Whilst researching for this video, it generally appears that the parents didn't want to push their belief system on either of their children, and they took to more of a nurturing approach to letting them find their own way through life and making their own decisions while supporting them along the way. They sound like pretty chill parents to me. Andrew had a slightly older sister, Charlotte, of whom he also had a good relationship with. They shared a lot of similar interests in things like music and fashion. Andrew enjoyed reading books, playing video games, rock and metal music. His fashion sense leaned towards darker clothing and was potentially inspired by his sister or choice of music. Andrew and I both grew up in the same era, and I also share a lot of similar interests, so I can tell you that dressing all in black and wearing band merchandise makes it very obvious to me that we're dealing with a young man who was very sure of the things that he liked. He knew what he enjoyed, and he wasn't afraid to show it. Despite all of this, there were absolutely no reports from his school, his friends, or family that Andrew was ever a victim of bullying. Something I can tell you with absolute confidence and first-hand experience. When you're dressing like this, just as I did, you can find yourself at the butt end of it quite quickly. His family described Andrew as a home bird who rarely left the house and never without saying where he was going. His father mentioned on record that his son was a very capable, intelligent young man but lacked certain street smarts. Socially, he had a small group of friends at school, but he didn't spend any time with them at the weekends. This all paints the profile of a young man that kept himself to himself, he knew what he liked, and he indulged in it respectfully. This makes everything all the more curious as to why shortly after returning to school from the summer holidays in 2007, Andrew got on a train to London and vanished out of existence. What are we missing? What changed? Why was Friday the 14th of September 2007 the day that blew the Gosden family's lives apart. Andrew's parents said that on the morning that he disappeared, he was slightly out of character, as he'd had a hard time waking up and preparing himself for school. They said he was quite irritable, which was out of the ordinary for him. When Andrew got dressed that morning and left for school, it was reported by a family friend that he was spotted walking across local Westfield Park to his usual bus stop. Instead of taking the school bus, he stepped away from his daily route and went to a nearby cash machine where he withdrew £200 from his bank account. Now, Andrew had £214 in his bank, which he'd saved up, and as most UK cash machines will only let you withdraw amounts in £20 notes, it's likely that that was just the most he could get in one go. It's also stated in reports that he had £100 in cash at home in his bedroom, which he'd saved up from various birthday cards and other things. Whether or not he'd forgotten about the £100 or had worked out exactly how much money he needed is a bit of a mystery, but it's worth remembering that when we dive into the theory side of this. With money in hand, Andrew made his way back home and was recorded doing so on a neighbour's CCTV system. When he got back, he folded his school uniform, neatly placing his blazer on the back of his chair, and he placed the rest of his clothes in the washing machine. He then changed into his usual casual clothes. Andrew was fond of a band t-shirt, like I said, which aligned with his taste, and that day he donned a black Slipknot t-shirt and black jeans. He then took his bag, which was covered in various patches from other bands that he enjoyed, his wallet, his keys, and his PSP with him. Nothing else was reported missing. The main thing to note, which again touches on a couple of the theories that people have had, is that he didn't take his passport. His father also mentioned that he didn't take the charger for his PSP. Now that might sound like a slightly insignificant detail to some of you. However, put yourself back into your 14-year-old self, and I assume that some of you are probably a similar age to me. If you knew that you were going to be gone for an extended period of time, maybe sleeping over at a friend's house or going to see a relative, you'd probably want to pack the charger for that. I mean, I freak out at the concept of my phone dying while I'm out on the road, so I have a backup charger in my car at all times. They always say that the devil is in the details, and this one does feel significant to me. Andrew wasn't planning on being away long enough that his PSP would run out so that he'd be stuck with nothing to do on transport. Anyway, I'm theorizing. I'm theorizing too early. At 8:30 that morning, Andrew left his house and made his way down Littlemore Lane towards Westfield Park, which again was caught on CCTV. He then walked to Doncaster rail station, a short walk from the family home. When he arrived, he purchased a one-way ticket to London that cost £31.40. The ticket attendant that was working that day remembered Andrew vividly, as he'd mentioned to him that a return ticket for the day would only cost an extra 50p. But Andrew insisted that he only needed a one-way ticket. Andrew's father, when questioned on this detail, said that his son was very aware that he had family living in the area and probably felt comfortable in a one-way as he'd have somewhere to stay. I'll touch more on that shortly. Just over an hour later, at 9:35, Andrew boarded the train to London alone, and a woman had reported sitting next to him on that train. She described him as quiet and engrossed in his video games. It was at this point, or around then, that the school had realised Andrew hadn't attended his first lesson and attempted to contact his parents. Now, unfortunately, his parents didn't manage to answer, as we all know how busy mornings can get, so they left a voicemail with the parents of a different child, one of Andrew's friends, asking them to contact Andrew's parents. At 11:20, Andrew arrived at King's Cross Station. He was captured on CCTV, leaving the main entrance of the station at 11:25. This was the last confirmed sighting of him. Later that day, when everyone had returned to the family home, assumptions were made that Andrew was either in his room or in their converted basement, enthralled in a book or playing video games. When his family sat down for dinner and Andrew didn't respond to the calls, his parents investigated and discovered that Andrew wasn't in the house. As expected, his parents thought that he'd gone to a friend's house after school and had simply lost track of time. They spotted his blazer on the back of the chair and assumed that he raced home from school, got himself changed and went back out again. Andrew's parents phoned his friends' houses, unable to find him, and learned that he hadn't attended school that day. Shortly after, the police were contacted and a missing person report was filed. The family immediately mounted a search party and walked the route that he regularly goes to school in the hopes to find any evidence that Andrew was around and was okay. By 9 o'clock that evening, a missing person leaflet for Andrew had been created. The timeline of that day is firm thanks to CCTV and witness accounts. All of this was wildly out of character and doesn't seem to fit in with Andrew's personality at all. In order to look for some clues and to help us understand some of the theories of his disappearance, we need to wind the clock back a little bit and investigate the events that ran up to that day. Depending on where you read about Andrew and the events that led up to his disappearance, you'll get slightly varying information on a break in routine that happened days before his disappearance. Some sources state that on a number of occasions, Andrew broke from his usual routine of getting the bus home from school and decided to walk instead. A walk that would have taken around an hour and a half. Naturally, this caused massive levels of speculations, as a break in anyone's routine can normally indicate that an external factor is creating a force large enough to warrant change. In an interview with Rob Benry for his Seeking Answers YouTube channel in 2021, Andrew's father Kevin was very clear that it happened only once and that he doesn't feel like it was anything significant. Andrew explained to his father that it was such a nice afternoon that he wanted to walk home, and the time in which he left school and the time that he arrived home match up perfectly with how long it took to walk. The evening before his disappearance was described by Andrew's father as very uneventful. The family ate dinner together as usual, washed the dishes, and then Andrew spent an hour assembling a jigsaw puzzle on the computer with his dad. They watched some comedy on TV, which was Andrew's favorite genre, and then he went off to bed. All very normal for a normal family with no challenges or trouble in their home life. There are some theories, which I'll dig into later, that claim Andrew wanted to go rogue and build a new life for himself in London, which is why he bought a one-way ticket. You see, one of Andrew's favourite shows was The Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin, which was a British sitcom about a man who was sick of his daily grind, so much so that he faked his own death in the middle of a deep midlife crisis in order to create a new life for himself. However, earlier in the year of his disappearance, his dad had asked him if he wanted to go to London and stay with his grandma for however long he fancied, and that his dad would also fund the trip. Now, you'd think for a young lad that's interested in museums, education, the arts, music, and all the culture that surrounds it, an all-expenses-paid trip to stay in London for a bit would be a bit more upbeat than Doncaster. But Andrew declined. He didn't want to go. His father left the option open to him, as there was never any pressure from the parental unit. But it just seems very odd to me that if he really wanted to run away and start a new life, this would have been a great opportunity to do so. The initial investigation started off locally, with his family and friends scouting the route he would have walked to school to see if they could find him. They searched until nightfall and continued over the next few days with the assistance of the police. On Monday, the investigation would hit its first major breakthrough when the lady who had sold him the ticket at the train station returned to work. When questioned, she recalled the boy exactly, due to the interaction that they'd had over the 50p difference in ticket price. She confirmed that Andrew had purchased a ticket to London, which gave police their first solid lead. The very next day, Andrew's family travelled to London and began a campaign to the public, asking anyone if they'd seen him in areas of particular interest to him. The police investigation has been met with a flurry of criticism, both from the public and from the family. They spent a lot of time looking into Andrew's father, Kevin, to see if he had anything to do with his son's disappearance. Now, this is quite normal, as in a large number of cases like this, the victim is normally known to the perpetrator. But in this instance, Kevin Gosden suffered a mental breakdown, severe depression, and attempted to take his own life as a result of the police pressure. In an interview, he said, "The initial response from the police was severely lacking. Ultimately, my breakdown was caused by the fact that whilst failing to request relevant CCTV footage and follow up on possible sightings of Andrew within an effective time frame, they preferred to carry out unlawfully recorded interviews aimed at pressuring me into revealing murder, abuse, anything to explain his disappearance. I knew I could tell them nothing as I didn't know, and attempted to take my own life so they would stop wasting their time and go search for him effectively. I thought this would be better for him, my wife, and my daughter." It took British Transport Police weeks to confirm that Andrew had gotten off the train and left King's Cross that morning, despite the request from South Yorkshire Police being sent to them on the same day that they spoke to the ticket attendant. In fact, British Transport Police couldn't identify Andrew, so someone from South Yorkshire Police had to visit them and point out on the screen, clear as day, a young boy wearing thick glasses, dressed in black, wearing a Slipknot t-shirt. That CCTV image was then circulated widely by the media, accompanied by a close-up of his right ear, which had a very distinctive double ridge. Tragically, this is where the trail went cold. By this time, the case was incredibly public. Tensions across the country in reference to missing children were at an all-time high, as merely months before Andrew's disappearance, Madeleine McCann was discovered missing from the hotel room in Portugal. As a result of this heightened level of awareness around missing children, a flurry of reports of sightings came through. Within the first 12 months of the investigation, around 122 sightings had been reported from all over Britain. Naturally, that's quite a lot of information to follow up on, and police are required to do their due diligence with everyone. However, the police continued to fall face first into failure. Andrew's father said that there were 2 or 3 sightings within the first week of the disappearance that seemed credible, partly because of the way that the witnesses claimed that Andrew had spoken to them. The family believed that the most plausible sighting to be the one that took place at a Pizza Hut on Oxford Street, which is about 2.5 miles away from King's Cross, which is about an hour's walk. The family claims that this sighting, which happened on the day he went missing, was never investigated by the police. There were additional unconfirmed sightings in Oxford Street on the following Monday, and more the day after, when Andrew was said to have been sleeping in a park in Suffolk. He was also reported to have been seen getting off a local train from Waterloo at Mortlake Station on the 19th of September, 5 days after he went missing. A woman reported a potential sighting of him almost a month afterwards in Covent Garden. She said she spoke to a boy who stated that he looked like a boy that she had seen on TV that was missing. However, the boy denied that he was Andrew Gosden. Later on, reported sightings happened in Streatham, South Wales, Birkenhead, Plymouth and Southend. Now, I'm not just out here saying place names at random. My point is that the family feel like none of these sightings were followed up on swiftly or at all. The woman who reported the Covent Garden sighting was apparently not spoken to until 6 weeks later. I can only try to empathize with the frustration felt by Andrew's family at the lack of urgency in following up on these things. It's impossible to know why things took so long, but it must have been infuriating, sitting around waiting for the phone to ring with information only to learn that days and weeks had gone past, where potentially credible information had disappeared into the never. As the years went on, events surrounding the case became rarer, with a few outlying instances. Now, some of these are mega. In November 2008, a man visited Leominster Police Station and claimed that he had information about Andrew. However, he had to use the intercom system as the reception desk wasn't staffed at the time. Now, by the time that a police officer arrived to take his statement, the man had left. Despite police appealing for him to come back, no one ever did. Subsequently, an anonymous letter was written to the BBC after the case featured on one of the evening shows with information about a possible sighting in Shrewsbury, but the two instances were never linked. In 2009, the family released an age-progressed image of what Andrew might have looked like at 16 years old in order to mark the second year of his disappearance. That same year, Andrew's father appealed to the gay community as he believed that Andrew might have been struggling with his sexuality, so there was a chance that they knew something. This was, unfortunately, unsuccessful. In 2011, the Gosdens paid a private company to conduct an underwater sonar search of the River Thames, using the same tech that's used to locate victims and objects at sea, but nothing was found. In 2016, the parents appealed once again for information on the BBC show Panorama. The following year, to mark the 10th anniversary of his disappearance, the charity Missing People made Andrew the face of their Find Every Child campaign, with him featuring on billboards and advertisements across the country. In 2017, the police made a fresh appeal for information. A statement on the South Yorkshire Police Facebook page said the police were, or previously had been, investigating requests for similar glasses prescriptions to Andrew's, requesting documents from the passport office or national insurance, and circulating Andrew's DNA, fingerprints, and dental records. In 2018, the Gosden family said that someone had reported an online conversation with someone called Andy Rue, living in Lincoln, who claimed that their boyfriend had left them and that they needed £200 to cover rent. This was massive for a couple of reasons. Rue was Andrew's childhood nickname, given to him by his father because he was apparently quite a bouncy child, but also if you break the name Andrew in half, you get Rue. When the contact offered to send this person the money, the user claimed that they didn't have a bank account because they had left home when they were 14. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd be all over that. It's not going to surprise you at all that the police investigated this and came up with nothing. Another huge development came in late 2021, when the police arrested two men aged 38 and 45 on suspicion of kidnapping and human trafficking. The older man was found to have had indecent images of children. Both men were released under investigation while they continued to dig deeper, but these were the first arrests in connection to Andrew's disappearance. The police then stated to the public that they had seized numerous devices from the men and that they'd been sent for a forensic examination. However, it could take between 6 to 12 months to crack the devices and fully examine them. A year later, in 2023, the police released a statement that the devices were still under investigation. 12 months later. In September of the same year, South Yorkshire Police announced that both the arrested men had been released without charge. They were confident that the two men arrested played no part in Andrew's disappearance. We'll just brush over the fact that they were released without charge, despite having indecent images of children on devices. I feel like we need a quick recap before we dive into the various theories about Andrew's disappearance, because I'm conscious that I've just thrown a ton of information at you. A 14-year-old boy who comes from a good home and doesn't appear to have any outstanding challenges one day gets on a train to London and is never seen again. There is no evidence to suggest that foul play was at hand, with zero indication that he was coerced or groomed. The police reacted painfully slowly to witness reports, CCTV access, and identification. His family worked tirelessly to locate the young man, with his mother and sister eventually taking a step back due to the emotional toll it was taking on them. So their father took up the mantle of representing the family. He merely woke up one day and within a few hours stepped out of existence. The family and police investigated multiple possibilities as to why Andrew could have travelled to London that day. Now, there are a ton, of theories floating around online, and some of them seem reasonable, where some of them are absolutely off the hinge. One of the possibilities could have been that he had travelled to London to meet someone he'd met online. His father said Andrew didn't use the computer at home on his own and that he didn't even have an email address. The police took the computers from the family home and Doncaster Library that Andrew had been known to use, but there was no trace that he was speaking with anyone online. Investigators even took the unique serial number from Gosden's PSP, which was on the box, and sent it to Sony. Sony confirmed that his device had never had an account registered to it, and even went as far to discover that the device had never even been connected to the internet. A similar investigation happened with his Xbox, which was also found to have never have been logged into an account with access to the internet. The only other computer in the house was his sister Charlotte's laptop, but she kept that to herself in her room like most teenagers would. Her sister stated that he just wasn't interested in social media at all, or even connecting with people over the internet. Andrew also had a bit of a reputation for losing phones, as he didn't really care for them. Now, not long before he went missing, Andrew had actually lost his phone, but he didn't seem overly fussed about replacing it. So as far as his family are concerned, he didn't have one. When police searched his room for clues, nothing was found to indicate that he had a secret phone or anything to communicate with people outside of the family. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about this one, mostly because there's no evidence whatsoever to suggest that this is what happened. Whilst it's not impossible and one of the more realistic theories out there, the more you follow the breadcrumbs, the more you come up short. Now, with relatives in London and having visited many times, it wouldn't be strange for Andrew to have gone to London on his own and visited attractions that interested him. The National History Museum, as I mentioned before, was a major place of campaigning for his family to see if anyone had seen him there. The National History Museum, as I mentioned before, was a major place of campaigning for his family to see if anyone had seen him there. Andrew had previously displayed a lot of signs that he was bored of school, so there's a very real chance that he simply took a day off and went for it. The family also looked at various gigs that were happening that day as well. The night of his disappearance had 30 Seconds to Mars playing at Brixton Academy and 6th playing a farewell show at the Carling Academy, which is now known as the O2 Academy Islington. Now, that venue is walking distance to King's Cross, and it was a very memorable show, as it was the vocalist's final show with the band. The Finnish band and writers of Absolute Belter, Buried Alive by Love, Him, helped with the investigation. They looked into their competition winners as they were hosting a very special invitation-only show on the Monday after Andrew's disappearance, but unfortunately, this turned up no results. There was no evidence that he attended any of these shows, both through witness statements and CCTV. It's also worth noting that a 14-year-old boy who looked visibly younger pulling up to one of these venues would have raised suspicion from anyone working there. Surely, the people working at the venue would have questioned a child coming to the venue on their own. Not to mention the fact that a lot of these gigs require adult supervision for young people to enter. Now, I know what you're thinking. Perhaps Andrew approached someone and asked if he could piggyback in with them, but you've got to remember that whilst Andrew was highly intelligent, his street smarts were lacking. The confidence required to even ask someone to do that without it raising any red flags would be massive. On top of that, because of the national coverage of the disappearance and his incredibly distinctive appearance, the fact that there were 0 witness reports from any of the gigs completely rules this one out for me. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video that one of Andrew's favourite shows was the fall and rise of Reginald Perrin. During the show, the main character grows bored of his mundane life and after suffering from a midlife crisis, faked his own death to start a new life. Andrew's father speculated that this could be one of the reasons that he left that day, saying, did he decide to do the Reginald Perrin thing and reinvent himself? Or was there something troubling him that he felt he couldn't tell us? In my heart, I still think his disappearance was a spur of the moment thing. If we couple this theory with the knowledge that Andrew was very much a homebody and took a lot of comfort in spending time with his family, I find this one very hard to believe. So what do we think happened to Andrew? I mean, what do I think happened to Andrew? All we know, and all that we can confirm, is that Andrew is missing. We don't know where he is. We don't know what he's doing. We don't know what happened. We just don't know. To date, the investigation continues. Andrew's dad, Kevin, is very much the public figure for the campaign and spokesperson for the family in an attempt to allow his wife and daughter to continue with their lives as best as they can. He is bearing the weight and responsibility of trying to find answers as to his son's disappearance, for which is admirable, and I salute you, sir. Now, if you have any information regarding Andrew, the website for missing people is in the video description. Now, I hope you found today's video interesting, and if you want to stay tuned for more tales of crime, paranormal, and the outright unexplainable, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel, and like I say, I'm aiming to try and hit 100 subscribers by the end of this year. Leave me a comment if you have any interesting things that you want me to take a look at, and I'll give it a read. Please look after yourselves, and if I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.